here, and so excited that he has agreed to come on. There's so much legacy to talk about today. We are here to also honor his parents, okay? And so I'm just gonna let him say a few words to you, and then we'll go on with the program. Welcome to Mega Voice Live.
Well, thank you. I am so glad and honored to be here today. Um, I'm all about gospel music. I'm all about music,
That's right.
but especially gospel music. And I appreciate you taking an opportunity for me to be able to give uh, honor to my parents. I've been wanting to do this a long time. I've been asked by a lot of people we should get together and do one and um, just kind of remember their contributions to New York gospel. Actually, they've didn't just promote in New York. They've done concerts at the Charlotte Coliseum down in North Carolina. So they've just been really instrumental in a lot of gospel artists' careers, and especially in the New York and surrounding cities.
Man, for years I've heard about the legacy of Gene Andrews and how much contribution they have made, your father has made, and then yourself has made to music in New York. So we're happy to talk about that even right now because this is a time where we get to celebrate and give flowers while people are breathing and really just celebrate what has done. And in fact, sharing it on Facebook, so many people have told me wow, how did you get that flyer? Oh, I remember that time, and it brings back great memories. It brings back great memories. How did this all begin? From your father's perspective, maybe, how did all this begin where, he decided he was going to promote and go out there and bring in more artists to the fold?
Well, actually, it started with me um, being a child prodigy, singing at the age of 3. By the time I was 7 years old, I was singing at Madison Square Garden with James Cleveland, Mighty Clouds of Joy,
Hmm.
Shirley Caesar, Dorothy Norwood. And actually, Dorothy Norwood lives in the next subdivision from me. So I see her all the time.
Wow.
Um, Benton was on that concert. I think you put it up on your as one of your flyers.
Yes.
And it probably was about 30 groups that you could see at Madison Square Garden for $6.
Wow.
And so from being involved in those things, and like I said, Dr. Melvin C. Walker, who was a promoter, and he managed me, and he was able to have platforms for me to be able to sing on the same concerts with Mattie Moss Clark, um, the mother, Dr.
Absolutely.
Mattie Moss Clark, excuse me, who was the mother of the Clark sisters. So at a very young age, I was able to um, experience gospel when it was pretty much coming, and so I think it was when my I did my first anniversary. I think by my fourth or fifth anniversary, my dad surprised me for a birthday gift, and he said, "This year I'm gonna do something special for you." He actually went and got James Cleveland,
Wow.
and so from there, I met Reverend Cleveland, and it became a tradition that he brought James Cleveland to Brooklyn. He brought James Cleveland on a Monday night one evening,
On a Monday night.
on a Monday night, and my dad always did some unique things. Even if you look at his flyers, you could tell it was one of his programs because he always started at 7:32 and a half
Yeah.
p.m.
So that was his more marketing
That
strategy.
was his signature, exactly.
Okay. I saw that on there and I was wondering, like, man, what is this 7:30 and a half for? So now we picked up some little tricks of the trade. So what did you really learn from your dad and how he negotiated bringing artists in?
Oh yeah. And back then it was a little different because he didn't have sponsors. I mean, he had a partner. He had people that Frank. If you look at some of the flyers, he would have like Frank Bell. the funeral home, who were good friends of his. But most of the revenue came out of my parents' pocket,
Wow.
and so um, it was one of those things. He just felt like it was a need to do something for young people, of course, and he didn't just want to have just regular concerts, but he also wanted to open the door
Yeah.
to expose other people
That's
who
right.
would never get a chance to be on platforms with Richard Smallwood, Shirley Caesar, Milton Brunson, the O'Neill twins.
Yeah.
Uh, I could go on and on, but it gave them an opportunity, and it also gave the Seventh Day Adventist community
Yeah.
opportunity to start to see what gospel music really was all about. Because when I was growing up, there were no drums. You weren't playing drums. You weren't playing the bass guitar. All of those things. Those things had to be board approved.
So you had to then rent out um, a lot of facilities in order
Yeah,
to accommodate that.
his go to was Bishop Lachlan. Bishop Lachlan High School. That was the meeting. That was the meeting place there. Baptist Temple and Bethel Baptist. My godfather, Reverend Doctor the late W.J. Hall. He's always supported me from young, so he had no problem letting my dad use his facilities, and of course Dickie Mitchell, who I spoke to you about, who's 94. He's still the organist at Bethel Baptist today. He's still alive. And he actually played for Alex Bradford, James Cleveland. I mean, his roots go all the way back to Mahalia Jackson at the March of Washington, I Have a Dream.
Mm,
And he's still 60, almost 65 years at Bethel Baptist.
wow. It's interesting being in New York for a while as a pastor and a concert promoter. We also had to adjust to renting out different places, different halls, finding out who we can actually rent from that is not going to overcharge us because we have been overcharged before, and who's going to work best with us. It's a little hard sometimes to do it in certain churches because you might have service that day, and service might run until the sunset, and you need to set up a little bit before that time. So, I think what your father did was set the trend and the how to for the future promoters.
Well, those dynamics have really changed now from back then. I'll give you reasoning. Um, he didn't he didn't use um, churches per se. He always looked at Bishop Lachlan. He
Yeah.
rented had his own sound guy who was his constant. He didn't use different sound guys. He used one sound guy, and after a while, that sound guy became very familiar with the artist. Um, that sound guy became a staple to G&D Productions. So if my dad made a phone call and said, "Hey, I have Henry Davis or Richard Smallwood coming into town at Bishop Lachlan," he automatically knew how many mics, he knew what gear to bring out. So my dad didn't even have to be there. He would just tell the school what time he needed to get in to do a load in, and it just after a while it just ran smooth.
And now I see you on a poster, and I have these posters generating as we're talking. Um, Gene Andrews Jr. and you are along with Walter Arties of the Breath of Life telecast. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. Um, my dad to he wanted to have artists from every denomination. He didn't just want to um, segregate himself to one side or one genre of gospel because, of course, there's so many different
Right.
genres now.
Yeah,
Thin
absolutely.
gospel, praise and worship, Southern gospel, quartet. So he felt that Walter Ortiz, the breath of life, and him being a fellow Seventh Day Adventist, he needed to still connect
Yeah.
where his roots were. A lot of times, I think that that's the thing. A lot of times, we don't stay true to the roots. We find something and we move past that. And he's one of my dad has always said, never forget. So I think meeting Walter Ortiz for me as a singer and as a young man coming up, that's somebody that I looked up to because I got an opportunity to see how he warmed up before a concert. And I'll never forget when Larnell Harris came for my dad one year. These guys would warm up maybe an hour before the concert would start. I mean, it was just amazing. They wouldn't just show up and just sit and wait to sing. They would literally come and warm their voices up and um, pretty much get acclimated with the venue, the stage, the acoustics, and all of those things.
Wow. So you'd see Larnell come in, and I have his poster coming up right now. So you would see him come in and just get prepared because a lot of times, people take for granted what it takes to succeed on stage, what it takes to really, make things go. But you would see a lot of preparation from them.
Exactly. Um, we call that today. Um, it's like a dress rehearsal um, or warming up. Groups would do that. Musicians would have warm up sessions and stuff. But he would, of course, run his tracks because back then that was another thing that was amazing because people were syncing with tracks. That was new.
Yeah.
So soundmen had to learn how to, and we're talking when you say a soundtrack back then, it was cassettes.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. A lot of people don't remember the cassettes.
Man, it
Um,
was cassettes, and you had somebody taking cassettes out, and what happened was they would have to fill up that gap while the engineer or the sound guy was actually changing and queuing up those cassettes.
that's a true DJ right there. I remember recording a lot of music on cassettes. Okay, you had to learn how to record, stop, hit it right
Yeah.
there, record, stop. In fact, it was one time we were putting together rap music, and something happened with our 4 track or whatever. So, we had to do something from the sampler, hit hit the record for the verse part, stop,
Mm-hmm.
go make a chorus part, stop, and you had to be on time with everything. So yeah, I remember those days having the tape and
Then
knowing what to do.
splicing the tape.
Splice the tape. That's right. You had to know how to use that Scotch tape.
You better.
You had to know how to use it well. And some of us got so skilled we were able to splice the tape seamlessly without even a
Yeah.
glitch.
And then the funny thing is, then you'd have to know how to unscrew the cassette and put it all back. Then when it got all raveled up,
Oh yeah.
unscrew and put it back together.
Oh yeah. Same thing with the VCRs. Same thing.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, man, we definitely knew how to do that. I'm kind of telling my age right here,
I
but
was
for sure,
telling mom.
for sure, we remember how we had to do it, man, because it was just like you found something on the radio, like, oh man, I hope it comes back on, because when it came back on the radio, you were ready to record it, and then you would have it
Exactly.
for yourself right there in your Walkman. Let's talk a little bit more about your dad. So you were singing by the age of 3. He wanted to promote you and put you out there, and so he started planning concerts. Was that based around
Well,
just that fact?
even even before that, a man named Dr. Melvin C. Walker. And if you look at some of those flyers back even in the 70s, now I'm telling my age.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the 70s, um, he would have concerts and he would bring Shirley Caesar. He would bring New York Community Choir. And the reason why I'm bringing up New York Community Choir was the director was Benny Diggs, and you had an organist by the name of Timothy Wright.
Hmm.
Timothy Wright started out as an organist. He wasn't an artist. He was a guy playing for Washington Temple.
Wow.
Timothy Wright was known for being an organist. Alfred White was the other premier organist in Brooklyn from
Uh-huh.
Institutional Radio Choir. And if you're familiar with Institutional,
Of course.
they were the hit makers. So you had
And
Institutional.
shout out to my man Butch Heyward.
As I say, Butch Heyward was the backup organist to Alfred White.
Wow.
So and then Butch. So a lot of things came out of Institutional Church of God in Christ with Bishop Carl E. Williams, the late Bishop Carl E. Williams Sr. was the pastor, but he was and J.C. White, Bishop J.C. White came out of that church. He's up in Connecticut, Turning Faith.
Okay.
So a lot of history and a lot of good gospel music came out of New York.
Well, I mean,
Came out
let's pause right there, because Institutional, if it's not for that, Butch, then you don't have the Hezekiah and the James Hall of today.
There you go.
So that's where it's all rooted. J.J. Hairston's and all of that. That's where it's rooted from, right there.
Of course. And back to Timothy Wright. So Timothy Wright branched out, and he started. There was a record label called Tomato.
Okay.
He started the Timothy Wright Concert Choir.
Wow.
And so the concert choir became very, very, very famous in New York. And then, of course, out of that, there was a bass player that played for Timothy Wright. His name was Jeffrey White. And Jeffrey White, Bishop Jeffrey White at the time, started the soul.
Okay.
So then you had Stanley Brown and David Frazier. They came out of Jeffrey White and the Soul Stirring Crusade Choir. then you had AGE. You had Anthony Evans. I mean, the list goes on and on how rich New York had. So what my dad ended up doing is, as I'm coming up, I'm singing in all these places. I'm singing Bishop Huey Rogers. He had a choir, Bible Way, and his son used to play the organ, Michael Rogers. So gospel music and gospel concerts would be at Washington Temple, and boy, these concerts would go on a Saturday from probably 7. They say 7, but they start at 9. But they would run into the wee mornings, almost 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You're going home, and sometimes literally, some people they would end so they would take so long to end. People would be coming in getting prepared for Sunday school. and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. Those are some exciting times.
Choirs. You had, believe this or not, I would do a concert. It'd be maybe me, again, New York Community Choir, Institutional. Mattie Moss Clark would bring a choir from Detroit.
Wow.
You would have Evangelist Rosie Wallace. I mean, the list will go on. And then you would have a choir that would come in with a guy named Benny Cummings and the King's Temple Choir. And you know who sang in Benny Cummings in the tenor section at that back then? Donnie McKirkland.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, how old was he then?
Oh man, Donnie was probably in his maybe 20s, maybe even younger than that.
Okay.
He got a couple of years on me, so yeah, he probably was a young guy. But King's Temple, Benny Cummings was ahead of his time. He had a guy named Willard Meeks that played the organ for him.
Yeah.
Look them up. Look up Benny Cummings and the King's Temple Choir. He was a phenomenal musician. He would have been like the Kurt Franklin back then.
Wow. Definitely got to check that out. So Timothy Wright comes out of that. He goes with his choir. So when does he take over the New York Fellowship Choir? How did that work out?
Well, that all came together with was different choirs coming together and different artists at the time. And so if you look on your if you look in your flyers, you'll see where my dad did a Timothy Wright show. He showcased all his choirs that he ever had,
Wow. Well,
which was
James,
really cool.
I'm definitely going to be sharing more flyers because you sent a ton. All right,
Oh,
I'm just giving the people a sample of
yes.
what was going on back in the day. But yeah, I have a ton that I still have to share even after this program. By the way, Butch is watching right now, so he's giving a
What's
shout.
up, Butch?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know,
That's my
Butch
guy
Hayward,
right there.
believe it or not, Butch Hayward um, is still today, to me, I still talk about Butch. Even whenever I talk about organists, I can't talk about Dickie Mitchell, Alfred White, even Timothy Wright without talking about the influence that Butch Hayward. We would all try to put cassettes by the Leslie organ to create that sound. I still watch Butch on YouTube to this day,
Oh,
just
absolutely.
just because of the sound.
I think he's going to have to record some stuff so we can play it again. He played at my church, and I had to record him playing just so I can soak in some of the legendary music. So we root it back to we've got Butch, we've got Timothy Wright, and shout out to Pastor David Wright who took over the legacy and also has new projects out even right now. But you can't go forward until you look back. You can't really move forward until you really stand back and see all these artists that really put their money on the line. They weren't making a lot of money at that time, but they made it work. They made legendary music. That was the greatest thing is that they
Exactly.
made timeless music. So even though you say, oh yeah, that's from the 70s, you still get a good feeling from listening. When I put on a good James Cleveland song, God is. Everybody is still singing God is till this day. Take Me to the Rock, Butch Heyward. I still get a good feeling out of that. So we root back, and every choir has sung a Timothy Wright song, and
Exactly.
that was from way back in the day. So this is music
See,
that has been timeless.
well, see the thing with right now, we're in such an era of choir. I was just listening to. I reached back a couple of weeks ago and I pulled up Butch Hayward's prayer song, "Gentle Breezes Blow Away." I was just listening to just just because. Um, and again, not only that, but they were writing songs. That Butch was writing songs. I mean, we had there. You could go to institutional and hear original music, and not just original, but it was original, good, great music.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and that was the thing that made New York stand out. That's the thing that made because we didn't sing a lot of stuff that was on the record radio. We were singing stuff that Butch might have wrote during offering. And he write a song, and that's musicianship.
Yeah.
And I think we've this generation has really they don't look at gates or don't really gatekeepers more and it in a condescending way, but the fabric of what the music is really all about is just so watered down now because people, like you said, weren't making money. They were just gifted musicians and they wanted to do something at the local level for their church because it was just in them to to want to do different things. And like as you said, when you talk about God is was written by Robert Frost. and people aren't familiar with, my dad used to bring to Supreme. Now, Henry Davis played the piano, and you didn't know whether to look at the guy singing. It was the three gentlemen,
Yeah.
or look at Henry Davis playing the piano. You were mesmerized. But Robert Fryson, bless his soul, he wrote "God Is." He wrote "Glorious in the Name of Jesus." He was a great, prolific writer, and when you talk about James Cleveland, people don't realize this, but it was a gentleman by the name of Fred Mendelssohn from Savoy Records. He was a Caucasian gentleman. Reason that black choirs came about. You can look that up. He took James Cleveland and he took him to Nutley, New Jersey, to do with the angelic voices, Dr. Lawrence Roberts, which I was blessed to be able to go sing at Reverend Roberts Church some years ago. But Fred Mendelssohn was the one that really pushed choirs. And James Cleveland, if you look at all of those records from Savoy, he went Michigan, he went to this state, but of course Donald Vail came out of that, the Choraliers. You had the Savettes, you had out of Philly, you had Philadelphia Mass Choir. Then James Cleveland even had his own record label called King's James Records. People don't even know that.
Oh yes,
There was a young lady named Sarah Jordan Powell. Who could forget her?
Man,
She sang a song called "When Jesus Comes."
Come on.
Look her up.
You got it. You got it, man. This is incredible history right here. I did post a flyer of the Voices Supreme. Also, your dad brought in the Milton Brunson and Thompson community singers, and and out of Chicago. I mean, shout out to Chicago. They've got a lot going on right now, but a lot of great music also came out of Chicago. So definitely Milton Brunson. You can go back to those songs, and still today it's legendary.
And you know what's amazing? And we haven't touched on it yet, but when I was just sitting here thinking about the harmonizing four, my dad brought the harmonizing four in, and these guys were singing in overalls. So that started, God bless his soul today, Mr. James Beeman. Mr. James Beeman, of course, was an Adventist guy that enjoyed quartet music, and he and my dad had a great relationship. It really, I mean, my dad, it took a long time for him to get over Mr. Beeman's passing. Mr. Beeman was the manager and the architect to the Estatistics.
Okay. Well, I know the Estatistics, and definitely root out of Harlem. My father-in-law is a part of the group, Leon Lewis, and yeah, and I can remember. Well, I know the legend. I know the album. They came out with the album, and eventually, still singing today, still going today. So definitely part of the legendary memories of those days.
Oh yeah, and then they had the younger guys with a gospel special, and as we talk about that, people don't realize, if you look at those flyers, you put a flyer up that had Wonder Boy. That
So that was Keith Wonderboy. Keith Wonderboy Johnson.
That was Wonder Boy, and not you saw the same flyer. You saw it said Little Cedric and the Haley Singers. That was Casey and JoJo.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. Nah, you got to talk about that a little more. You got to talk. You got to talk about that a little bit more. Casey and JoJo.
Out of Maryland. That was Casey and JoJo. That's history, man. I'm telling you, that's history.
So they were singing as kids in these concerts?
They were singing as kids. Little Cedric and the Haley Singers. My dad talked about them. He said, "Hey, there's this group, these kids. We gotta." And then, of course, he brought Keith, Keith in as well. I knew him as Wonder Boy and the Spiritual Voices.
Yeah.
So he brought those two in, and then what he did was to support it. He brought in some more mature gospel artists. Now, and I can't take away from the when we say the gatekeepers of quartet
Yes.
concerts.
Yes. Yeah.
My dad just he kind of sprinkled his hand. He was more of a gospel guy, but because of the Estatistics and James Beeman,
Yes.
it kind of pushed him to bring Shirley Caesar in the Estatistics. I remember when the Estatistics had an anniversary, and it's, of course, you have the flyers. He brought Shirley Caesar, but the real gatekeepers to quartet music in that time, it was Big Dan and Elizabeth Lewis. She was a female woman promoter, and Big Dan. What made Big Dan stand out, and I think you have the flyer. He always wrote little cartoon things on his flyers. It was the gospel heavyweights. These two big guys. They were huge. They were the gospel heavyweight. But it was back then. There was such a respect for promoters. If Big Dan was doing a concert and during the season, my dad would not put anything on. They kind of didn't step on each other's foot. Now you had some guys that might have knew a concert was coming and may have wanted to do something different to draw people away. But for the most part, it was a lot of respect back then, for the promoter, and the artists had a lot of respect for one another, and it kind of, and a lot of times artists were just excited to see each other and be able to perform together.
I love the history. I love going back. I'm a historian myself. I just like learning history, learning how it was done. GD Productions, GD Productions. Tell me what that name meant.
Well, Gene and Dee, my mom and my dad productions, and one thing about my mom, who celebrated her birthday yesterday, um, she always supported my dad, and if I will, I just felt like, and it's just a personal feeling. My dad has been an imprint into gospel, and he really hasn't been honored. And I look for the honor, but it can be a sting when you see others who haven't done as much. Um, and I think Elliot was one of those people, that Elliot Lamore, he took the time to thank my parents for what they did, because hey, my dad was working a 9 to 5, and he was taking money out of the house
Mm-hmm.
so that other people. And listen, he didn't always make money. He didn't make money off these concerts.
Wow.
Some he did. He made a little, but he did it for the purpose to so the young people would have something to do. My dad was very, he always went against the grain. He fought for young people at the church. Say, hey, they should be able to play gospel. They should be able to have drums in church. They should be able to do all these things and cut all the red tape that you see today,
Yes.
where there is young people at any of the churches. They should know that somebody really fought for them to be able to have those liberties they have today. Because when I walk into a church now, it does not look like the Adventist church I remember of yesteryear. It was a lot of. I remember one time they would lock the organ. I'm not kidding. They would lock the organ on Sabbath so that we couldn't play
Yeah.
gospel music until the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
You could play for, I'm going back, showing my age,
Oh yeah.
MV, Missionary Volunteer,
That's right.
before it became AYS. That wasn't happening.
Oh yeah.
You're not going to, and a lot of people didn't like the fact that my dad was having those kind of concerts.
Yeah. Oh,
bringing
of
artists
course.
and doing it. Yeah, I'm just being transparent about it. It wasn't.
Absolutely.
It listen, you can't fix you can't do an oil change without getting some oil on you.
That's right. That's right. Listen, I just did some painting. I had a whole bunch of paint on my head, on my hands, on my feet. So I get it. And so I want to give a shout out to some of the choirs that your dad brought in. There was the Mt.Vernon Youth Choir.
Mhm.
There was Lighthouse Tabernacle Children of God under
That's
the
right.
direction of Sis Debbie Andrews.
Ah,
um, let's see. You had the
and you know, Butch
Bonnie
played for
Johnson. Yeah.
Butch played for Lighthouse Children.
What about Lighthouse?
Butch Heyward played for the Lighthouse
Oh
Children
yeah.
of God.
Butch told me
Yeah.
all about that.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Butch was right there in the midst of it. So shout out to Lighthouse. Shout out to Butch on that. Shout out to Bonnie Johnson, who was a phenomenal artist. And right on that flyer, a lot of people didn't know. Timony Figueroa, 7 year
Yeah.
old singing wonder. So even at
My dad.
7 years old, she was a singing wonder. And we know what she has done since then.
Yeah. My dad, he encouraged her. He just, like I said, he gave platforms not knowing where they would be today. He just did it, because when I was growing up as a child singing, that was kind of unheard of. And, and I was kind of sheltered from doing certain kind of things. I mean, I was an understudy in a play on Broadway for Raisin in the Sun. I
Mm-hmm.
actually did record 2 records. I worked with the Osmonds. I traveled some with um, Roberta Flack. Um, and people don't even know the story of the gospel radio. We're talking Joe Bostic.
Yes.
He
Yes.
was a
WLIB.
he was a boxing referee. He was a boxing referee. But he's the one that played and got James Cleveland and gave those guys. Then you can't. You got to talk about WWRL. You got to talk about Rocky Bridges.
Come on.
You got to talk about Eleanor Morris. These were radio announcers that were really the matter of fact. WWRL was right next door to Greater New York Academy,
In Queens.
right there in Queens.
Okay. All right. Shout out to Greater. We got a few shout outs from Isaiah. I'm sorry, Butch. Oscar Shaw. Shaw T. Ruth. Doc Wheeler. Melvin Walker. Eleanor Morris. And Charlie Story. You remember those names?
Of course I do. Of course, Charlie Story and Eleanor Morris. You tell them I said hello. And I just mentioned her name.
Okay.
And she's was a great radio announcer back then. And that's what I'm saying. You can't forget Big Dance and Elizabeth Lewis and Eleanor Morris and Rocky Bridges and Joe Bostic and Joe Bostic Jr. And these people were taking the risks.
Mm-hmm.
They were. My dad would even have Eleanor Morris come and MC some of the concerts. Charlie Story, he would do concerts, and I mean, so this was what New York was all about,
And shout out to Brother
bringing that
Raymond,
music.
Raymond, the late Raymond Saunders, who would MC some
That's
of the
right.
concerts. Lance
And Dr.
Sylvester,
R.C. Connor.
R.C. Connor, absolutely. Some of the greats. And we stand on their shoulders today. McGuire Entertainment Group stands on the shoulders of Gene and Dee Andrews. You guys are my inspiration for what I do. Because again, we're all about promoting our own, promoting artists, especially artists that don't get a lot of shine and don't get talked about a lot. They're not on the major radio stations. They're not. If you listen to mainstream radio anyway, there's only a few artists that just get run over and over and over. So, a lot of the independent artists that are just coming up don't get that play because, again, it's all about distribution. Do you have a distribution deal? Some may have a distribution deal and maybe not, maybe not a record deal per se. But, Shout out to Mitchell Cook, who's also shouting you out all the
What's
way
going on, Mitch?
back from South Brooklyn choir
Another
days.
That's another brother that used to sing a lot. Mitch Cook. My dad has had Mitch Cook on his concerts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, the climate has changed a lot in the music industry. I don't think that it's so much distribution anymore as it is. It's kind of they're just kind of it, it's if I will,
hmm
it's a it's a system.
Yeah.
It's a system because so many great projects that you can hear online
Yeah.
that you see on Facebook, and you're just sitting here saying, how come and why? Um, but it's these conversations. It's what you're doing in your outlet. It's what the independent radio stations are doing, and visual that are starting to make impact um, in its own way. So we need you because just think about when gospel was back then. All we had was the radio.
That's right. That's right.
All we had, and guess what? We only had AM.
Yep.
There was no FM.
So
So if you just drive around a corner, you might just lose the station.
that's why WLIB is on AM radio. And Butch said, how many people remember Brooklyn Apollo?
Yeah.
Brooklyn
Listen,
Apollo.
you know what I remember? You know what I remember the best, and Butch is gonna crack up. What there was a play that Butch starred in the actually institution who starred in Gospel at Colonus. That was the best play walking. And you could go down to the Brooklyn Academy Music and see it. And I'm telling my age, I still have Colonus on VH tape.
Wow.
And man, Butch played some stuff. I mean, it was that whole play. And I would give anything for them to do a remake of Gospel of Colonus. They had Clarence Fountain and the Five Blind Boys in that play. They had Institutional in that play.
Wow.
They had I can't think of the other group, but it was another quartet group in it. But you talk about a good play, Gospel at Colonus,
Yeah.
man, awesome play.
We need
See,
some plays, y'all.
Butch know what I'm talking about.
We need some more plays. We definitely need some more plays that we can go to and that's well put together. I can remember a lot of plays, but definitely we need some more. We need some more prodigies, from this stage, from Butch, from yourself, from your father. We need more. We need more people to step up and just continue to do the work. And again, we honor Gene and Dee Andrews for the work that they have done, just the constant, we all know what it takes to make things happen, and it's hard work. It's hard work, and I have their picture right up here. It's hard work that makes this stuff happen because when you're promoting, you have to bring in certain names or else. A lot of people tell me, they say, hey, why can't we just have an all Adventist concert? Why can't we just have all Adventists? Because y'all don't come out for just all Adventists. A lot of times you've already seen them at AY or at your local church concert. And when we produce a paid concert having those same artists, you're not coming out because you're saying, I'm not paying to see artists I can see at my church. So you had to bring in the James Cleveland. You had to bring in the Richard Smallwood. You had to bring in the Shirley Caesar. We're not coming to just pay money to see ourselves. And like you said, you're not making much money as a promoter itself. You're bringing in the Soul Stirs. You're bringing in a lot of those artists because we're not a group that supports our own just for supporting our own. You've got to give us a reason to support. And that's what your dad did. Your dad gave everybody a reason to come out and included a lot of the local choirs like the Lindonaires and the Shiloh Youth Choirs and Brooklyn Temple, of course, we give shout out to and Shalina Wisdom, Sister Wisdom. I
Sorry.
mean,
Mm.
we can go back to those days, and those were great choir days. I mean, I remember just growing up in the '80s and choir music, no matter what. I went to Lebanon. I had a great experience at Lebanon for music. Was definitely my route, and even started back in Harlem at Zion Temple in Ephesus. My first solo at 5 years old was at Ephesus. So I still have a picture, me holding a mic or me in front of a big old mic. But I can go, we can go back in those days and just recognize that it was a great time for music. It was a great time. Even the '90s, we had some great time for music. Somewhere along the line, music just started to kind of duplicate itself. Nobody had their own style because when you would, coming up in the '90s or the '80s, you knew you can hear a Walter Hawkins song and know that's a Walter Hawkins song. You know that you can hear a Butch song and say, man, that's rooted in Butch Heyward. You know that you can hear a John P. Key or a Hezekiah Walker. You knew the type of brand a Timothy Wright would have. You knew their songs when they hit the radio. Okay, that's their style. Shout out to Bobby Soverall as well, and and there was just so much rooted back that we can remember. Everybody had to have their own style. Nobody was trying to sound like each other. Nobody was trying to sound like James Cleveland, even though James Cleveland, a lot of his sound came from other writers and other people that contributed to what he did. But, he just blew that up on the scene. So, we want to recognize not only the artistry of Andre Crouch and Sandra Crouch, not only the artistry of a Shirley Caesar, but the character that they brought to gospel music. The character. I mean, you could just know, man, this is, and Kirk Franklin comes out of that too, because you can hear a Kirk Franklin song and say, oh man, that's Kirk Franklin. A lot of people, hear the latest one of Kirk Franklin, but I mean, we go back to Joy, God's Great Joy with the Georgia Mass Choir. And his first album was recorded at the Grace Temple in Dallas Fort Worth at the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so, we give a shout out to that. Another person that was on that project was DeJuan Starling, which is another phenomenal artist. So we go back. Of course, we don't root back. We're talking about New York. We go back to the Oakwood days of great music that's come out of there. And we just appreciate the people that fought to give us great experiences. And your father, your mother gave us that. You have given us that throughout your career, throughout your ministry. And, we just want to say we appreciate you.
Yeah, and the funny thing you said, that was the next person I wanted to talk about was Bobby Soverall. Bobby Soverall was another one of those phenomenal people. He had a group, the Angelic Host.
That's right.
And you could go to a Hanson place, and those guys always sang original music.
Yeah.
Everything with them and their harmonies. And the one thing you can't beat, and I don't care where you go, and somebody can come find out where I live and beat me up and whatever you can. The harmonies that come from the Adventist Church. It was a training ground for ears.
Yeah.
We sang anthems.
Yeah.
We sang a cappella. I'll give you an example. Well, this is probably before your time, but there was a group called the Artistic Chants. It came out of Ephesus. And the Artistic Chants had their own sound.
Wow.
Ask Leon about them.
Artistic Chants.
Now,
check them out.
If I would go as far as to say that the Artistic Chants had some type of influence over the Estatistics. They would sing the song "Wonderful," and they were another. The gentleman's name was Willie Bethea.
Oh yeah.
He was actually a funeral.
Of course,
he was actually a funeral director.
We know Willie.
Yeah. Well, he did the Artistic Chants, and so the sound and the harmonies that and that come out of that
Yeah.
are just amazing. And so, like you said, people don't, to me, people are not laboring in when they write anymore. I mean, this music is nice, but back then people took days, maybe weeks, maybe months to write songs, and it just amazes me the catalog that Butch must have in songs. Bobby Soverall came up with a lot of great songs. James Hall has been influenced that way. It's always to write just good music, and I think again it's because of the training ground and that we had the gatekeepers and my dad was being an organ musician. He always wanted to bring good quality music
Yes.
to New York.
Yeah.
And when he brought Henry Davis and the Cowboys, was a group that you never anything. When they came to town,
Yeah.
they packed the building out.
Man, we can talk all day. We can talk all day
Definitely.
about this. Shout out to Rosie Leacock and Hanson Place Children's Choir. I know I have a flyer somewhere with them on there. And I'll, through time, I'll be sharing different type of flyers.
Yeah,
People can remember.
that.
It's good to remember. But now, we're in a different phase of life right now. We're in a different phase of life, and it's still
Mm-hmm.
important. While you are home, if you're an artist, if you're a musician, while you're at home, maybe we're not in a physical building. This is a great time to just worship, to fast, and to come up with great gospel music. We want to come up with some more timeless music. And I believe that God has promised us, He said, listen, I'll write a new song. I will write a new song in you. And God is that great that if we tap into God, um, He'll give us brand new legacy music today because God is that infinite. God can come out with a brand new hit every day if we were to tap into that source. So really, the
You're
source
right.
is all about God. Want to thank you for joining the Mega Voice Live. We are all about promoting artists, promoting going back in the past, digging up some stuff. We'll have to do this again, but we want to thank
Yeah.
you for just agreeing to be on here and to talk about the things that we went through. Another shout out to Joanne Turnbull um, and all these choirs here that we see here, Ivan Jackson and One Accord, and so many roots. Because now that I'm looking at some of the names, I'm like, oh, that's where they got that name from, or that's where that started. So always, to move forward, you have to go back and remember where we started. But I want to thank you. Anything you want to say before we close out?
Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm thankful that my parents are still on this earth. My dad has some health challenges, but my mom is right taking care of him. And so I'm thankful for my sister and just thankful for the contributions that they were able to make. That even as I look now, some 50 years later, contributions that I was able to make and be around because I believe that that was an era when it was really wow. I mean, it was just I didn't if what I see now, I maybe didn't appreciate it back then. And it's almost like being a parent when your kids are when you're young, you don't appreciate the things your parents do for you until later. So I want to thank my parents for definitely um, keeping me, giving me that opportunity and continue being instrumental in it. And so I'll have some gospel plays for you. I'm working with a gentleman that comes out of Tyler Perry's camp,
Okay.
got great plays, and we were getting ready to do a launch on those things. So I've got some exciting things coming up. I actually just signed your friend Stephen Manders to management, and I think he's incredible. And so we're going to have looking for to have some exciting things come out for him.
That's
But
what's up.
I want to encourage you: don't stop, keep going. We need you. Um, and then we have to start to pass that mantle on. And if you get a chance, go on your Instagram to Hope of Harvest for Harvest. Um, that's Catherine Bruton. She's over at BMI, and they're doing some wonderful things over there. She has um, a ministry that she's helping young kids, and in this time they need food and things of that nature. And so we're talking, but I did want to make sure that I did mention Hope, and Stanley Brown is instrumental in that as well. But as an organization, please get it when you get a chance, go over there and look at that. Try to be
Definitely,
a blessing to that. And again,
definitely.
I thank you for the time. And if anybody's trying to reach me, you can go to my website, www.globalentertainmentgrp.com, or Gene Andrews Revival on Instagram, or Gene Andrews Revival on my Facebook page.
Okay, absolutely, and then we'll make sure that you're definitely tagged here. Especially in our Facebook Live and our YouTube, we'll put that information in there. We want to thank you. Shout out to Michelle for sure, Michelle Combs, who is a phenomenal storyteller. So she will be on one of my broadcasts telling a children's story. You have a talented family, and God has anointed you and blessed you. Once again, oh man, he just came on board. Want to shout out to Pastor David Willis, who is definitely legendary in Northeastern
Oh
youth
yeah,
ministry.
most definitely.
Cannot go without mentioning him, David Willis, um, his family,
Yeah, yeah,
so
had
much
him
contribution, so much
definitely.
contribution there. Man, I mean, we could just talk all day about how
Yeah,
many people have inspired us, and just we just want to thank everybody. Thank you for watching. You have been with us throughout the whole program. We want to thank you. You can replay this program a little later.
yeah.
Congratulations to Stephen Manders. He's done a phenomenal job, and I'm looking for great things coming out of him as well.
Hmm.
And this is McGuire Group, Entertainment Group. This is what we do. We are the glue. We pull people together. We talk about what's going on, and we're a new sound in the air because we want to continue to put new sounds. We want to continue to put music. So, like our page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Look for McGuire Entertainment Group anywhere. Check us out on Instagram, McGuire ENTV, and also YouTube, McGuire ENTV. I've also put everything in a playlist now so that you can distinguish what is McGuire, the Mega Voice Live, and then we also have the Anchored Voice Live. We have the podcast, Helping Men to Anchor Life. So we have so much to bring you, so much content. We want to thank you, Gene, for coming out and
Thank
just
you.
being a part of this broadcast. And to everybody, keep writing great music. Let your voice be made known. Have that mega voice in this world. Um, I'm just going to say a prayer. I'm just going to say a prayer over your family, your father. And, my father's dealing with his health issues. So we want to keep our fathers prayed up during this time, our legends prayed up during this time. And so I'm just going to say a word of prayer before we close. Heavenly Father, you are just so awesome. We thank you for writing new music in us. We thank you for calling Gene and Dee Andrews to the forefront to bring us great music. We thank you for the ministry that they have served throughout their time here on this earth. But now Gene Sr. is dealing with his health issues, and we're just praying healing over his body. We're praying healing over his circumstance. I'm even praying for my dad and healing over his body and healing over his circumstance. We pray healing over this world right now because we're dealing with so much disaster. But God, you are worthy and you are on your way. And we can't wait to get to heaven so that we can all sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. We can't wait to that day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody,
Amen.
for watching. This is the Mega
Thank you.
Voice. And we will see you soon with more content. God bless you, everybody.
Thank you.